Hi, I'm Scott Peotter, former Newport Beach City Councilman. We're here at the Board of Supervisors meeting where they're talking about expanding John Wayne Airport. Now, they're talking about not expanding the commercial airlines, but the corporate jets. They're talking about increasing corporate jets a lot. And so we're here today to hear what's going on and interview some of those people, and the passions are running high. Let's share those with you.
Don't want any expansion of the footprint of the airport. We also don't want any expansion of the commercial or private jets out of the airport. And we adopted a resolution unanimously. Our council is united in opposing this.
So expansion, what about switching? I hear a lot of talk about they're going to get rid of the piston planes and bring in jet planes. Good, bad, why do you want one or the other?
Well, we think that the plans right now, all of the alternatives have their own problems. Alternative 3 is the preferred alternative, although we've now heard about some other alternatives. So right now, I think we do nothing or we choose alternative 3.
And alternative 3, just briefly, is to bring some of the buildings up and to FAA standards, but really not expand any of the footprint, any of the flights, any of the kinds of airplanes that are going to be flying out of there.
That's right, and they'll bring them up to FAA standards as well as possibly make it more sustainable, make the airport improvements that are necessary to maintain the airport, but not to increase the commercial jets. So we're already suffering from the increase of the commercial jets. I've lived in the community for more than 23 years, and never before did I see or hear jets going over my home. So now we're hearing jets going east and west, north and south. It's just a major increase over what was before.
And that, part of that is because the corporate jets don't have to comply with the settlement agreement. So they can take off day and night, 24/7, and they don't have to fly up the back bay where it's the least noise impact. They can cut over Costa Mesa.
That's right, and Newport. We're also getting complaints from Huntington Beach and Laguna Beach. So the whole community in the area surrounding, the corridor cities surrounding the airport are being impacted right now. We can't handle any more expansion.
I live in Newport, right in the path of all the airplanes. I live on the back bay, and I hear aircraft noise all the time. I don't want the pollution. My backyard has got black stuff all over my patio furniture. When I open my windows, I have it in my house. I don't want it. I'm fine with what it is now because I had knowledge of when I came here that there was a 10 o'clock curfew, and then on the weekdays it started at 7, and on Sunday it would start at 8. I realized what I bought into, and I'm fine with that. I do not want an expansion at all. I don't want these other planes for the noise. I really can't even enjoy my backyard. I'm from LA, not even knowing knowledge of this was really that bad, but it is. So if we can stop this, I've been doing the petitions. I've been at nighttime, in the dark, knocking on doors all over the place. And everybody does not want this. So please do not expand this. We're begging.
I came here to voice my opposition to I call it the General Aviation Expansion Program.
And why are you opposed to it?
I'm opposed to it because it's going to add so many more jets, business jets, Uber-style jets to the current fleet. And they will be able to fly 24 hours a day. I'm concerned about security, TSA checks. I also, the previous speaker mentioned that he had flown privately. I've flown privately, and nothing is checked. You can walk on with anything. Anyone can get on those planes. It's just not the right thing to do.
I spent a morning at one of the private FBOs recently and sat in what I guess is considered to be the lobby and watched people check in for a private flight, and there was literally no security at all. They were asked if they wanted a massage.
That's important.
Yeah. And they were served some refreshments. But as far as any kind of safety, security, TSA type of procedure that you and I have to go through when we want to fly, completely missing, and that very much concerns me.
And I think the important takeaway here really is that they take time. They've not done a proper, really restudy in the last couple of years. They need to stop the process. They need to not vote on either of the three that are out there now. Take time to do a new environmental report. Take time to listen to all the constituents and also to listen to the concerns of the pilots at the airport. I don't think any of that's happened. I think they're being rushed, and I think there's a lot of questions about why they are being rushed.
So the city of Newport Beach is advocating alternate 3, which supposedly corrects some of the FAA safety issues on the airport, but does not expand flights, does not expand footprint, doesn't expand any of those things. Would Dover Shores, you and Dover Shores community, do you think they'd be in favor of alternate 3?
I think if they had to vote today, they might be in favor of that. I can't speak for everyone. They would if they had to vote. But I think overall everybody there in the community would vote to wait and do more background work.
Some people say if they vote on alternate 3, it's over and done. We don't have to deal with it for several more years. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't think it's ever over.
No, there's always going to be constant pushing, right? Yes. Diane, I know you came and spoke. Why don't you tell us what you said and why?
Well, I'm saying what the whole room is filled with, the whole board chambers, it's filled with people who are opposed to airport expansion. And I'm right there with them. The city of Newport Beach voted unanimously. The city council voted unanimously. And we are here joined with our local residents from other cities as well to state our opposition to any expansion. We do recognize that the current FBO facilities, of which there are 2, should be updated to FAA safety standards. So that is contained in alternative 3, plus some other improvements in that immediate area. It's been brought out this morning by many that this study that was done on the EIR was inadequate, did not correctly identify the significant health and air pollution issues that needs to be identified and dealt with. It didn't really take into consideration a key stakeholder group. We're not the airline pilots, the small aircraft pilots were not even considered. There are like 1,500 of them. So there's some real flaws in this analysis that the county airport has done. We want them to look at the real impacts and come back to the community and tell us how we're going to work together to improve our quality of life, because it is today now, it doesn't pass muster. We are opposed, strongly.
What would be another alternative that you would like to see?
No expansion whatsoever, and strictly just rehabbing the facilities we have now. John Wayne Airport is big enough where we've had it.
So alternate 3 does pretty much that, but I think they put new buildings in place of old buildings, so they are not just refurbing them, but they're replacing them, but supposedly not increasing them.
My understanding is that there will be increased flights slipped into those buildings.
With alternate 3?
Yes, because of the corporate jets that that are not controlled by the airport. They're
Right. No settlement agreement on the corporate jets.
not affected by the settlement agreement.
Right. So they can take off. I know. My bedroom window faced the airport, and 2 o'clock in the morning, you'd hear jets taking off.
24/7, 4 o'clock in the morning, you wake up, what do? You start reading the DEIR.
Well, you really have to be desperate for sleep for that.
Which I get that way when I think about the impact that the airport's having upon our jewel of a community.
Beth, glad to have you today. I know the Board of Supervisors is out there talking about expanding John Wayne, everybody in Newport Beach's favorite subject. Tell us why you came today.
I came to let them know of our concerns. They've promised us for how many years of no expansion. I truly believe that the general aviation rules are being bent and that our curfew is of utmost importance. Obviously, they can't expand the footprint, but I believe that they are truly going to be expanding the output of airplanes and getting into our curfew, which is just a travesty.
Right. The corporate jets don't have to maintain or abide by noise regulations or curfew, and that's what they're talking about expanding.
Exactly, and that's what's going to impact us. And while there might be 1 or 2 now, there will be so many more in the future.
You feel like they're violating our trust?
Absolutely.
I'm here because I'm basically a tenant at the airport, and what's happening is the little guys are getting squeezed out. When you talk about general aviation, there's two parts of it. There's big jets, like regional carrier jets that fly into John Wayne, but those are classified as GA. Then you have small planes, like the one I fly, which is a 4-person single-engine piston aircraft. But what's happening is very, very wealthy people and the FBOs at the airport are trying to move John Wayne to a jet center and move it away from a commercial airport with a general aviation population. I'm also a resident of Newport Beach, and I'm affected by the noise. So I know there's a huge difference between a plane like mine and the noise signature, because I can take off and not violate a curfew in the middle of the night, and a large corporate jet that would take off, because the large corporate jets in many cases are louder than the commercial jets. And what you're going to see is a lot more commercial jets coming in. Right now there's one particular carrier who's coming in on regularly scheduled service. You can fly them to Mammoth or the Bay Area or Las Vegas, and they're using ACI as a base. And they're getting around the limitations on commercial aviation. I don't think that's a fair end run, because the city of Newport Beach and the FAA and the airlines came to an agreement to limit the amount of flying.
So because it's not a commercial airline, but they're really acting like one, they're selling individual seats and they're flying to prescribed places and taking off, and they're acting like a commercial jet, but they don't have to comply with the curfew or the noise regulations.
That is correct. They have to comply with the noise regulations, but they don't have to comply with the curfew, because they're a general aviation flight. It's only commercial aviation that's restricted by the curfew.
And this is what they've been referring in there as the Uber of the sky.
That's part of it, yeah.
I came today because there are alternatives being considered by the Board of Supervisors, which frankly shouldn't be considered. Alternative one, which is being promoted, takes 62% of the spaces allocated for small airplanes and scrapes them off the field.
Likely your plane will go with it then.
Yeah, likely the planes that I fly. I'm a renter right now, but I've been on the list for a hangar at John Wayne since '94. So for 25 years I've been waiting for a hangar. I'm about halfway from where I started. And so there's just not enough space for GA. And they're talking about reducing it significantly in lieu of private jets.
So the big expansion that everybody's talking about is these FBO, fixed-based operators, where they're going to fly corporate jets. Why is that bad?
I don't think it's necessarily bad. They're looking for economic development. I think county supervisors should do that. It's going to increase noise. It's going to increase traffic of larger, noisier airplanes. There's going to be more pollution from it. They're saying, well, if we expand that, we're going to have less operations. Sure, the little Cessnas aren't going to be there flying.
But you're trading a G5 for a Cessna.
You are, and I think the impact to the area is really very negative, frankly, and the impact for general aviation is devastating.
So do you have a preferred alternate?
Alternative 3 of the 3 proposed is the least invasive in terms of general aviation, the small planes. The group I'm with, SoCal Pilots, has put together an alternative 4, which I think addresses the issues much better. We've got some aging infrastructure needs to be rebuilt. That should certainly be done. But the airport doesn't have to be remade to do any of that.
It's called maintenance.
It's called maintenance.
Okay, so we're at the Board of Supervisors. They're talking about expanding John Wayne. You spoke. Tell me what you said.
Basically, I drew on my 40 years of teaching decision making and asked the supervisors to keep in mind the 3 characteristics of good decision making that they needed to be thinking about. First is you pay attention to whatever the history of that decision has been. And this Board of Supervisors made the commitment to Newport Beach years ago with the settlement agreement not to allow planes to fly over all night, which is what these changes would allow to happen. Second, You need to think about stories that have holes in them. This doesn't make sense to do this kind of change for a very few private pilot owners and then leave the rest of us with real pain all night long. I have a friend in Long Beach who literally has flights from FedEx and UPS over her head all night long, every 5 minutes. Who can tolerate that? And so realistically, the community is saying that this doesn't hold water. And we teach business students, of course, ask more questions. And then finally, consider the short-term and the long-term consequences of any decision you make. Their short-term consequences are a disaster for the local community, but long-term, we're not going anywhere. So this enlarging of John Wayne, which, as one of the speakers said, John Wayne is full, is completely in contradiction to any good thinking about the process.
Yeah, and what people don't realize is that Newport Beach came here in 1906. The airport wasn't here. They weren't flying airplanes at the time. It wasn't like the airport was always here and we moved around. It's our own tough luck. We're trying to be good neighbors, and they're, in effect, violating a promise, right?
Violating a promise, and that's exactly what I said to them. You cannot ignore the fact that you made a commitment to people in this community who acted on it. We built schools, we built houses, we built all kinds of resources because we had the settlement agreement that made our lives possible. And in doing this, there is real possibility that your life would not be any longer an attractive place to be. You're going to ruin Newport Beach. That's a ridiculous thing to do for the County Board of Supervisors, and yet that's what we're facing. So I hope they come to their senses and make a good decision here.
John Wayne is totally inadequate, and we come to grips with that. We missed a chance to have what they're talking about, an international airport, when we missed El Toro. It was a damn dumb move. We should have done that, and now we're trying to make something happen that will not.
So what do you think about their idea of taking alternate 1 with the numbers of alternate 3?
It's a sad excuse for a solution, but it's a temporary kick the can down the road move.
So they're trying to leave themselves options to go bigger, promising to go smaller. Of course, we know what that happens. They're already kind of reneging on their promise to Newport Beach now, right?
You said it as well as I could say it.
So, I mean, you supported a lot of these guys in getting elected. What do you think about that?
Well, you elect them for a lot of reasons and stuff, and I don't know there's a lot of Phi Beta Kappa keys up there. But at the end of the day, we've got good people trying to come up with good solutions, and they're looking at something that's an impossible fit. That 500 acres is incomparable to the 19,000 acre no home zone that we had down at El Toro. So it won't work. So the one proposal that's we've got to start working hard on communication and transportation to other venues.
I personally live under 166 commercial flights per day on Balboa Island. I can't pray in the morning. I can't answer the phone when a jet goes over. And there's expansion that's going to occur, and whether we go with any of the alternatives, there has definitely been an increase in overall activities of takeoffs and landings at John Wayne. I don't have the exact number, but in the last 7 years, it's more than doubled. So the airplanes that take off and land at John Wayne over the last 7 years has doubled, whether it's private jets, private little Cessnas, or commercial planes like Southwest, United, American. It's all across the board, and we need to stop. These alternatives being presented are all about expansion. We're violating the John Wayne Settlement Agreement by allowing general aviation not to have the same playing rules. They get to go flying any time of the day or night. They don't have the same noise abatement, and they don't have the same environmental standards. Barry, who runs the airport, already said 3 times, we cannot control the activity at John Wayne Airport. We cannot tell private general aviation they can't land or take off. We have to allow them to do it. But you're clumping in large private jets that really are commercial, and it's not protecting us, and the John Wayne Settlement Agreement is basically non-existent at this point. We don't have an issue with small planes. It's the big planes. I would ask them not to expand John Wayne Airport, period. No expansion, no alternative 1, 2, or 3. Revisit the whole thing, get more community input, have the environmental study report amended to show the current impacts, and then come back at the table and invite us to those hearings as well before we come to a vote. And let's make a vote as not just the supervisors voting, but the community voting.